The freighter drifted, engines flickering every now and again. The life support had failed hours ago. The crew inside the stellar carcass clad in environment suits as they scrambled as best they could in zero-G to fix the failing core. Without the sensors, the scanner suites, and the AI, there was no way they'd see the Predator sneaking up on them to pounce. The 840-ton behemoth laden with 600 tons of cargo, precious metals, medical supplies, ship components, a fat and juicy piece of prey for the shadow lurking nearby. Even at full functionality, the massive and bloated whale would have had a hard time evading any kind of interception. A single point defense cannon hung limply on the belly of the freighter, the gun rendered impotent without power from the ship's core. The Predator was patient, lurking just out of the visual range of the bridge crew. Without power, they couldn't tell they were being scanned over and over again. The Predator was mapping every single corridor, every bulkhead and storage room. It knew precisely where to strike, where to sink its fangs in for a quick and clean kill. Third quadrant, second bulkhead, just above the habitats. The Predator inched closer. The fiends within it itched with the promise of the kill. Somewhere inside, a command was issued. The engines flared to life. The crew aboard the crippled freighter only caught a glimpse of the beast as it lunged, a brief bark of warning over the comms, before the entire bulk of the ship shook with the impact of the Predator's attack. Less than a moment later, alarms blared. Hull breach. The Predator's talons dug into the wood steel hull, metal crumpling and tearing from the grip. The boarding ramp slammed home, automated torches burning the hull before breaching charges blew the section inward. The Predator disgorged its children, the tiny forms skittering across the boarding ramp and into the incapacitated hull. Minor firefights erupted in corridors. Few on both sides died, as the invaders quickly made their way towards the cargo compartments. One of the invaders punched in a code, the door sliding open to reveal nothing. An empty hold greeted the invaders. No cargo, but a single piece of paper on the floor. The lead pirate looked down at it. Surprise. And a cartoon spaceman holding up a middle finger with a black flag on his chest. The invaders' comm suddenly blared to life, a dozen voices screaming about something else out there. Another predator. A bigger predator. And it was pouncing. Dozens of tiny new stars burst into existence, the drives of the boarding torpedoes lighting and sending their payloads streaking towards their now immobilized target, before two great plumes of blue-white light illuminate the massive alpha of the pack of hunters, rushing to bite into their chosen prey. The torpedoes rushed forward, AIs dodging streaks of point defense fire. Some burst in little plumes of fire as lucky rounds find purchase, but most closed the distance, slowing rapidly before slamming into the other predator's hull like teeth biting to flesh as the alpha stalks closer for the kill. Inside, the torpedoes open, armored figures dropping into compartments and hallways. Aboard the freighter, bulkheads burst open as similarly armored figures suddenly emerged into the invaders' lines. Chaos reigned. Hours earlier, the freighter All That Glitters hung in space 1,000 kilometers from the Queen Anne reborn. One vessel a humble commerce transport, the other one of, if not the most, notorious pirate ships in the sector. But today the Queen Anne wasn't raiding. Her gunports were closed and her boarding torpedoes were cold. Instead, the captain of the most notorious human pirate vessel was aboard All That Glitters, unarmed, alone, and with a 90 million credit bounty on his head. You can't be serious. Gabriel, the captain of All That Glitters, scoffed. As a heart attack, Dawes replied, the cocky smirk on his face not phasing even a little. Gabriel's laughter was a barking hyena-like cackle as he doubled over, slapping his thighs. Dawes simply stood there, his smirk unmoving. It took the freighter captain a moment to regain his breath, a telltale cough from spacer lung, overtaking him briefly. The freighter captain gestured at the haphazard and jerry-rigged state of the freighter's command deck. This hulk is held together with duct tape, chewing gum, and an occasional sticky tissue that Emerson donated during night watch, Gabriel scoffed. Fuck you, sir, Emerson said from his station as the crew laughed. Stop jerking off during your shift and I might actually pay for you to get fucked next shore leave so you can stop staining my damn sheets, Gabriel said before turning back to Dawes. This boat is a century and a half old. We're running drives 2 centuries old. Our drive core is only 2nd generation and our hull is untreated wood steel. We wouldn't last 30 seconds in combat. Dawes swayed in his mag boots, idly in the zero-gravity command deck. The captain wasn't wrong. The ship might as well be a wooden Mars ship from the homeworld that had been shot into space for how durable and advanced it was. The Queen Anne Reborn would have had to be extra careful to not just rip it in half if they'd had ever attempted to board her. Look, Dawes said, holding out his hands. I know, it seems nuts. But we can both profit here, and big time. He waved his hands over his wrist computer, and a hologram appeared of an alien ship, complete with specs and a big fat wanted graphic. It's the Andraxi, he said. It's been scouring the lanes between here and Ursi Majuro for the last 6 revolutions. These lanes. I'm sure all of you know at least a few vac-head traders that aren't coming into port anymore because of this piece of shit. Dawes looked around. More than a few of the crew were nodding in agreement. A few spat at the sight of the hologram. Even Gabriel's eyes narrowed. It's a Hydraxis ship, Dawes continued. It's faster and more maneuverable. The Queen Anne couldn't ever catch her in the void. But if we can get her stopped, lashed onto something, we can sneak in and get under her guns. Our boarding torch could get past her point defense. We can pin her between you and us and board her, keep her from running. Gabriel looks around at his crew, and he could see they were all thinking what he was. It was a good plan. A damn good plan. We've only got a few small arms, though, Gabriel countered. Hydraxis raiders will be better armed. While you're busy boarding them, we'll get shredded. Dawes nodded. Now. The Hydraxis couldn't process what was happening. The assault had been completely turned, as heavily armed and armoured combatants that shouldn't have been there were suddenly among their boarding party, and more were spilling out into their own ship from more than a dozen boarding torpedoes piercing their hull. The Andraxis' point defense cannons swiveled and opened fire at the Queen Anne Reborn turned wide. 4 sections of the Queen Anne separated from her hull, as massive arms unfolded and held them out as shields to screen the ship from the oncoming fire. Do it now, Gabriel! Dawes shouted over the comms as the Queen Anne Reborn turned hard and dove at the Andraxi. Hours earlier. You would, the pirate said, if we didn't hide a few dozen crazy pirates in your ship at key choke points. You hold them just long enough to make them think they're winning. Then we jump them. Boarding torpedoes will get us inside their ship. Meanwhile, our best guys pop out into the middle of their attack, and suddenly the bugs are in a vice and we squeeze. The Queen Anne comes in, rams our boarding ram down her throat, and you turn that big, fat defense cannon around, and drill down into her heart, and kill her. Now. The core of all that glitters roared to life, the lights in the dim corridors flowing to life to highlight the carnage unfolding within. All that glitters had an unusually large point defense cannon for a ship its size, a deterrent for any would-be pirates. The massive GUA-13 cannon fired heavy armor-piercing incendiary rounds that would give most corvettes and even some frigates pause. It was precisely why Dawes had chosen this ship to spring the trap. And at this range, she couldn't miss. The gun swiveled up just as the Queen Anne Reborn slammed home, ramming the Andraxi and impaling it on the ship's reinforced boarding ram. All their glitters fired. The 5 rotating barrels unleashed hell, chewing a yard-wide hole through the attacker's hull, and drilling deeper and deeper, until it found her heart. The Andraxi's drive core erupted in a gout of blue flame that belched from her wound, and out the top of the craft, the ship's hull screaming and groaning as it died, both the Queen Anne Reborn and all their glitters buckling and shuddering from her death throes. Inside, the combatants inside were tossed about like ragdolls, by the more seasoned human pirates and the Hydraxis raiders quickly recovering as the humans pressed their advantage. The Hydraxis had nowhere to go now. Hours earlier. And what do we get out of all of this? Gabriel asked, crossing his arms and trying to look as though he wasn't already convinced. We're putting our asses out in a vacuum a whole lot more than you. Dawes' smirk widened to a full grin. We know that she's got a full hold, Dawes said. She said 6 other heavy freighters in the last 2 weeks, and she was sighted in this area in the last 72 hours. which means she hasn't had a chance to empty her hold yet. We get her cargo." "Then what the fuck do we get?" Gabriel scoffed. Doors tapped on the hologram. "Wanted. Andrexy. Hydraxis pirate vessel. Bounty. 65 billion credits." The freighter's crew went silent. "You get to present the carcass and claim the bounty. Now." The pirates shoved the last of the manacled Hydraxis into the cargo hold and closed the door. Repair crews were already working at repairing all their glitters, and the rest were liberating the hundreds of tons of cargo from the Andraxi onto the Queen Anne Reborn, as well as reclaiming the generators that created the sensor ghosts used to lure the Andraxi to the freighter. More than a few of the freighter crew were drinking with the pirates in the corridors of all that glitters, cheering and celebrating their victory. On the command deck, Dawes and Gabriel sat, sharing a bottle of very rare and expensive bourbon from Dawes' personal stock. "So," Gabriel asked, hissing as the potent liquid burned down his throat, "why?" Dawes downed a shot without hesitation, his feet up on the console. "Why what?" he asked, pouring another round for himself and topping up Gabriel's glass. "Why go after the Andrexi? You can't claim the bounty and her cargo can't be enough to come close to it," he said, sipping and hissing again. "Seems like you did this at a loss, Captain. Bad business." Dawes chuckled, nodding a bit and sipping at his drink. "Principle," he said, making Gabriel raise an eyebrow. "Tell me, Captain, you freighters have rules, right? Helping each other out, codes of conduct, social contracts, that kind of shit." Gabriel nodded. "Of course. Keeps everyone flying, keeps the goods moving. Everyone gets home and everyone gets paid." Dawes sipped again, staring at the video feed of the Andrex's corpse outside. "Piracy isn't any different. Whether it's human, Solarian, Frengra, we all agree to certain rules," he said, sipping at his drink again. "The Andraxe broke those rules. She was here as revenge for our victory over some ally of the Hydraxis. Don't fucking know who. But who can keep track of every fucking conflict nowadays?" He took a bigger drink. "Early on, she killed a civilian transport because they didn't have any valuable cargo. Wanted to send a message they meant business or some shit." Dawes took another long drink. "Well, that's bad for the rest of us. Governments overlook us most days, but the second one of us starts popping civvy ships." Gabriel nodded. "Makes sense." Dawes nodded, then handed a datapad over to him. "Program these codes into your ship's nav beacon. No legit pirate will touch you, and if someone does, broadcast to the channel I bookmarked there. They'll wish they hadn't," Dawes said, slamming back the last of his drink. "Oh, and the codes will only work for you, so no neat ideas about sending the code to your buddies. Okay?" Gabriel nodded, standing up and clasping Dawes by the wrist. "Thank you. Best of luck to you, Dawes," he said. "You too, Gabe. Keep the bottle." Hours later. Dawes stepped out of the shower in his captain's quarters, drying himself and wrapping a towel around himself. He poured a drink for himself and slammed it back before sitting down on the edge of his bed. He hunched over and took a shuddering breath before it overtook him, a sob escaping as he buried his face in his hands. The sobbing went on for several minutes before he reached to a drawer beside his bed, pulling a picture of another man and two kids. They were smiling, happy, and full of life. "I got him, babe," he said, touching the man's face. "I got him for you."